Thank you, Amon Tobin. You're the best, man. And I just know, I just, I just know in my bones, no particular information that Amon, that you're based, that you've got to be based. You're from, and you're probably Jewish though, right? Amon Tobin. I think he's from South America. But I just know in my heart that even though there's no lyrical content in your music, you're based AF. You're an honorary Gentile if you're not actually. All right, it's Thursday, July 11th. My name's Dennis Dale, and what is it? It's Thursday. Yeah, I just said that. I just Joe Biden. Yeah, it's Thursday, and so the idea is to Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 o'clock every morning, and it's going to be a little different from what I'm going to try to do today, but it will be topical. It'll be short, brief, kind of light, but say hello if you're in there. Just say hi. It helps. Just say yo. If you have problems with words, if you're not very articulate, just say yo. You don't even have to say yo, Dennis. You don't even have to say hello. You just say hi, hey, yo. Yeah, and maybe we should do on a Sunday something I'm thinking of as long form, longer broadcasts on a given subject, which is what I wanted to do today, but frankly, I'm not ready. I'll show you this post. This is a draft post. It's actually from a couple of years ago. I started writing this a couple of years ago when this stuff happened, and then it sat there like 3,000 words. They always get out of control. And I never got around to finishing it, but then something else happened recently to make this relevant again. And I thought, well, dig up all those words you wasted time on before, and let's see if it's, something relevant we could talk about now. Because now I'm working a lot in my, my mundane real job. I only have a little bit of time during the day, like right now, to come and do this. Then I could go back to work. But so it's very difficult, and it's already difficult enough when you're lazy, like me. And some other factor in there that prevents me from doing what I should be doing, which is writing, and occasionally broadcasting. On all these things. Not that anyone's looking for it. I mean, obviously you guys aren't looking for it. You come here and you act disappointed that it's not like the old days. Like, remember blood sports? I mean, I think anybody who's here is kind of from, hey, Phil. Thank you, Phil. You're better than those other two guys here right now, because they suck. Those silent bastards. Anybody here probably remembers the Luke Ford days. Blood sports and all that high energy, fun stuff. Maybe Luke still does that, but it doesn't seem to be a thing anymore out there anywhere. And I never got anybody anywhere, because frankly, I would rather level up out of this into something, make an impression somewhere else on a broader scale. Everybody would. Anybody who pretends they just want to sit around in obscurity because that's integrity. Obscurity is integrity. They're stupid or dishonest. I remember when Luke Ford's show was humming along, and frankly, they had backseated me and brought in Brundlefly. There was all this energy all of a sudden. And so I was actually participating, very bad experience overall, but I was participating in those little chat rooms, private chat rooms, I forget what they're called. Does anybody still do it? Discord server. I was talking to one of the regulars. I don't think he shows up here now. And I was just talking, and I was taking for granted that it was okay. And I was talking like, yeah, about how Luke's show might get more viewers and might just level up and get more attention. And the guy said to me, I can't see him, I can imagine his face, "You want the show to blow up? To get popular, I guess." The way kids talk, blow up. First thing I think of course, is explode. And I was like, oh. And then I just all realized it all, right? I was hanging out in this chat room with these oddballs, younger versions of myself, all these oddballs, and they sort of alternated between talking like the show was going to change the world, just absolutely crazy, silly stuff, and this stuff, which is, yeah, but this, the show's going to have more integrity and it's not going to be popular at all because that would be selling out. And I thought, hey, how do you reconcile these weird views? Of course, it all turned out to be very disappointing for everybody concerned, and our host turned out to be kind of a bitch, kind of dishonest, but we knew that going in, didn't we, guys? Anyway, tangent immediately upon coming on the screen. So the idea is to at least once a week, probably do it on Sundays if we can make the time. I was angry yesterday trying to get everything done that I needed to get done around work. So I wasn't working so much just a couple of months ago. But now I'm working like a real job again, and it sucks. And I was like, viscerally angry at not having my time to do all this crap. And all this crap that I had to do is all this, chores. It's you're enslaved by this, nonsense. Don't let it happen to you if you can avoid it. If you can ever get control of your time, don't do like me and most people who end up working for a living and just trading all our time for the geld. Anyway, this was the old post that I was going to put up. This is from a couple of years ago, right? It's about two guys who were railroaded in Portland, and I've talked about them before. Two guys who were associated with Vancouver, Washington's Patriot Prayer Group, which you probably heard of, may have heard of, probably have forgotten about them. That was a group that was brought up, created by a guy named Joey Gibson, and I think Tusitala Tiny Toeezy, who's one of the guys I'm going to talk about. Two political neophytes, two guys who basically don't really know much about politics, but Joey Gibson says he was watching, remember 2016 when Trump came along and there were provocateurs like Milo Yiannopoulos, right? And I think it was 2017 or so. This might have been the actual demonstration that inspired Joey Gibson. But things instantly got nuts, right? Remember? And the left was shutting down protests. Anything that smacked of conservatism, right-wing activism, Trumpism, all of a sudden, very suspiciously, frankly, it's like these people were unleashed. And remember, I think it was 2017 when Milo Yiannopoulos, of all people, this fucking weak tea, this pointless, flaccid, gay grifter, right? Who himself had just appeared on the scene to grift and take advantage. Speaking at Berkeley, right? And Berkeley, home of the free speech movement of the 60s, absolutely erupted. People were setting fires and chasing after people in the streets and running around. It was Antifa's big debut on the stage, really. They went nuts over Milo Yiannopoulos, who was going to give a talk at Berkeley probably on the subject of free speech, which is pretty ironic too. And it was going to be Milo's pointless provocations, whatever it was he was saying. Does anybody even remember? Was there any substance in anything Milo had to say about anything? But it was just that he was out there making fun of wokeism, right? That grift. And that was enough to set them off. Well, this guy, Joey Gibson, he's in Washington State. He's like a regular working class guy who's kind of on the border between regular guy and I don't want to say criminal. He's gotten in trouble with the law. But, this is one of these guys, them. They work your regular jobs or working class guys who are naturally conservative, right? To the extent they know what's going on, they see something like the Trump effect, and they just fall in line with what they see as the ostensibly conservative side of things. In this case, it was Trump. Joey Gibson saw that. I think it was that particular. He saw, he's watching the street fighting season, the street fighting as it starts, and he decides, I want to get in on that. Now, Joey might be a grifter. He might be genuine. It's probably some combination of those two things. But he decides, I'm going to start a group, and it's sort of like Proud Boys-like. And he called it Patriot Prayer. And they are right across the Columbia River from Portland in Washington State. And so they decide, we're going to hold rallies and we're going to taunt at the vociferous Antifa faction in Portland, of course. Portland always had this this Antifa presence, and that was getting quite active over the question of Trump, of course. So they thought, okay, we're going to get involved, and it could be a grift because they raise money and stuff, and they had countless weird characters that glommed onto them. There was it was hilarious. In fact, so I was in Portland, of course, and I started filming these things. Here's one of the first ones. Am I sharing this one? Yeah, let's be sure we're sharing. Sharing is good. June 2016. All right. So you see, Trump's not even elected yet. And I'm filming from the right-wing side of this confrontation. And so this is how these guys worked. They knew that Antifa would show up to any demonstration, and their specialty was back the blue, pro-cop demonstrations, which is funny because the cops ended up putting them in jail. Two of their guys, the cops were right there cooperating with the railroading of two of their leaders. But, they show up, and Antifa. And here you see what the crowd was like at first. And this is kind of the innocent early period when it would be the crowd would be half black bloc and half just regular dipshit people who think they're progressives and liberals would show up because they hear that Nazis are marching in down. They think it's Skokie, Alabama, right, and the KKK. So they show up to shut down these protests. And back then, the police still used to show up and keep people separated because there was still a desire on the behalf of the city and the cops to not let the streets devolve into political brawls. The cops ended up giving up. Again, this is 2016. By 4 years later. When the George Floyd riots hit, and this is 4 years before it all started getting cranked up with the George Floyd riots, by the end of that, 2020, 2021, the cops started saying, okay, we're not going to break it up anymore. They would announce ahead of time, oh, the right-wingers have a big rally planned. Just letting you guys know, we're not going to break it up. You're on your own. This girl's hilarious. See, they're throwing vegetables at this point.
Somebody just threw a piece of food.
How dare you? USA! 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 USA!
One of the dudes standing near me, I think you'll hear him talking here, was this dude that used to do a show with Nick Fuentes and has sort of disappeared now. I forget his name. I know I've probably shown this clip a couple of times already. The girl saying just love.
Uncontrolled burning. That's an uncontrolled burning. I see a fire back there. Bring that flag over here. Hey, if you're going to burn the flag, wrap yourself in it first. It smells like freedom. Terrorists! That's what that flag smells like. Hey, terrorist bike squad. Terrorist bike squad. Terrorist bike squad. Dude, don't fall over while you're flipping people off. Don't fall over while you're flipping people off.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
are you okay the second time around? Are you okay this time?
The bearded guy, he didn't come back in.
Have a good day. Ride safe.
Finish his beers with you. He can sell that.
The anti-Trump guys have bike groups roaming around.
That's part of you, Randy. We don't want to go
Yeah.
to your mother.
All right. This is all idiotic. Yeah, anyway, that's how it started. By August 22nd of 2020, things had gotten to the point where now the right-wingers were showing up in gear. And it was so funny, like in those early days, 2017, 2018, maybe, it was really ridiculous. We had all kinds of bizarre characters showing up on both sides, obviously, but a lot of weirdos on the right-wing side. There was one guy who used to show up dressed in this, like, he wore the Roman, like a cuirass or whatever you call it, right? The Roman vest, armor, with the skirt and the Trojan helmet kind of thing, right? And he was like Captain America. And there was another character I remember, I don't know what happened to him, on the right-wing side. They had all these weirdos. And one of their regulars for a time was this giant transvestite, I guess trans female, a guy who used to show up, and he was this great big guy, built like a potato. One of these dudes who's just really big, and just like giant potato build. And he walked around with this wig, like a blonde bob, and a dress over this giant body. And he would get into the front lines and mix it up. This footage is by me, of course. So annoying. And this is one of the days that got one of the guys in trouble. I think you'll see him here in a moment. But this is one of the days where the cops just stood back. They parked down the street. I think I get nailed with something here. Somebody actually hit me with something. Yeah, and you can see the lack of organization on the right-wing side. They have, they're just a bunch of crazies that show up, for these things. They don't have the organization that Antifa has. And it's just a bunch of guys showing up here to throw down. But, surprisingly enough, there aren't a lot of fights that actually break out. And this is later, this is Antifa. So, the right-wingers have had their protest. And now they have to go home. This is always the biggest problem they have. They have to get out of town, when they're done. And if they disperse, they break up into small groups, and then Antifa tries to find lone individuals or smaller groups that they can bully. Because Antifa, I give them credit. They're a bunch of little scrawny dudes, and the right-wingers tend to be bigger guys generally. They're mostly younger guys, tougher than the little Antifa pipsqueaks. But Antifa will go out there and try to, are used to. This is all over, by the way, because of these prosecutions of the right-wingers. That's how the city shut it down. But Antifa will go out there. I mean, they look like midgets up against the other guys, but they'll go out there and try. And when they tend to lose the little skirmishes, right? Because most people don't really want trouble. Most people just want to come out, and if there's going to be a fight, they want to be sure that they're going to win, even the right-wingers. Nobody wants to go out there and be outnumbered and have to really fight, So they have these little skirmishes on the lines, and the right-wingers tend to win those, because like I said, they're bigger guys. But when everything breaks up, then Antifa gets activated, and they're like, okay. And because the right-wingers are now moving on out, Antifa can also pretend to be chasing them out, because that's the optic that they're looking for. They want to present as if they chased the Nazis out of Skokie, chased the KKK out of Skokie, right? But this guy in the foreground here, his name is Alan Swinney. I'm going to have to find better footage for this post, if I ever post this up. And he's a guy who showed up. He came out from Texas to join this fight, and actually seems like one of the less flaky people involved in all this, but he was prominent. He's a really tall guy, kind of scary, a big, tall, kind of tough-looking, gruff guy with a deep voice, and I was always up front, and so he quickly became despised by Antifa and targeted, and they eventually got him with the help of a journalist named Sergio Olmos. I think he actually works for the New York Times. Sergio Olmos made a career out of the George Floyd riots, out of his bullshit reporting for the riots. He's blocked me on Twitter now because I called him out. But with the help of Sergio Olmos and the cops and Antifa, Portland's district attorney put Allen, sent him to jail for 10 years. The guy is doing 10 years for bear macing some guys, some Antifa that were chasing him out of town. I was there that day. Not even sure. I think I might have got the bear macing on tape. And for shooting a paintball gun that hit a girl in the boob and left a Oh, and another guy got hit with the paintball around his eye, this lunatic Antifa guy. So Alan Swinney got 10 years for those acts, which occurred over a couple of days.
Or learn how to value human life.
You love it when you see the guy in the wheelchair. That's Wheels. And I used to see him in the grocery store. Wheels. And there's Alan in the middle there, and the big guy with the beard and the bear spray.
Hanging it upside down.
And what you're seeing here is this small group of patriot prayer, whatever, that's what they call themselves. A small group of self-described patriots. Here he is. I caught some of this, Bear Mace. They're just trying to get to their cars, basically, and these other guys are following them, harassing them, and generally trying to threaten them and trying to chase them off. Yeah, anyway, that's where things were. And this piece, if it ever gets published, it's called No Country for Bold Men. Huh? Clever, isn't it? When the state allied with anarchists to outlaw political protest in Portland. Deeply unpopular Portland District Attorney Mike Schmidt is on the way out. In May, he lost an election primary to his lead prosecutor, Rene Vasquez. Schmidt, who will remain in office until the end of the year, arrived via electoral landslide 4 years ago, when a more innocent Portland blithely accepted his restorative justice model, and as he sailed in on a wave of Soros bucks from the same organizations then working to elect progressive prosecutors nationwide, and to pass progressive legislation such as Oregon's failed and since repealed Measure 110, decriminalizing drug use. As if on cue, days after his victory, the BLM George Floyd rioting began. This is 2020, and the rioting started, I think, May 29th, 2020. And the sitting lame duck district attorney followed the city's police chief bailing out of the flaming airship Portland in mid-June. The callow young Schmidt, who's got like no experience prosecuting right. The callow young Schmidt, with no significant experience prosecuting crimes, took office in August 2020 with the George Floyd riots occurring nightly. Schmidt announced he would only prosecute select, blatant crimes of violence associated with the, quote, racial justice protests, unquote, throwing out nearly all of the cases police brought him against Antifa rioters, with whom he publicly sympathized. Among the crimes he would refuse to prosecute specifically was rioting. 4 years later, the city looks nothing like it did going into 2020, and Vasquez racked up endorsements from the police and firefighters unions along with big donations from real estate developers and other wealthy local liberals disaffected by the city's recent history. The despised Schmidt's campaign was seen as a referendum on Portland's dismal recent direction, and his loss now is hailed as a victory for, quote, law and order, unquote. But it's worth noting what constitutes law and order in Portland, and the two high-profile criminal cases that lifted Vasquez to prominence, and his recent electoral victory as a champion of the law. In 2022, Vasquez collaborated with Antifa to prosecute two right-wing provocateurs known for brawling with Antifa on the streets of Portland. Antifa has been after the two for years, shooting one, Tusitala Tiny Toisi, in the foot in September 2021 when Antifa disrupted a right-wing protest against mask mandates. Less than 2 years later, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison for assault and riot, despite not having physically assaulted anyone. Nonetheless, he was convicted on 10 counts, including second-degree assault, originally mandating a minimum 5-year sentence. a quote-unquote liberal judge invoked state enhancement provisions and sentenced Toese to 8 years. Toese's crime was pointing at a van full of Antifa. I never know how to say it. Antifa. That's how I'm going to say it. Not Antifa. It just sounds wrong to me. And I don't capitalize it because I think you're not supposed to capitalize it. I think they used to write it uncapitalized, was their thing. And I don't decapitalize it to make a point because I don't believe in that's kind of stupid point making. Anyway, and Antifa. Toese's crime was pointing at a van full of Antifa aggressors who arrived on the scene after traveling 15 miles from downtown Portland specifically to violently disrupt a right-wing demonstration on August 22nd. This demonstration on August 22nd, 2021 was deliberately scheduled on the anniversary of what I just showed you, that video of that ridiculous demonstration where they were squaring off. That was August 22nd, 2020. And that was when the police officially abandoned the streets. And so on that August 22nd, 2020 event, they eventually got Alan Swinney, sent him up for 10 years. And then for the August 22nd, 2021 rally, they managed to nab poor Tiny Tusitala and sent him up for 8 years. So, the point is, you can't beat City Hall and Antifa combined. they will, the cops aren't your friends, above all. Police were they had police testifying at Tiny's trial, at Alan's trial. Police are not your pals, anyway. And one reason I think the police were glad to collaborate against Tiny and Alan is the right-wingers made themselves a problem for the cops. Obviously, for years, for 4 years, a good 4 years, the right-wingers were a major headache for the cops because they would show up and they'd create these huge disturbances. Forget that all Antifa had to do was ignore them, and they would come and have their little flag wave demonstrations and nothing would happen. That dynamic persisted throughout, even though the right-wingers got more provocative in the end and started suiting up. But still, the dynamic always was that the right wing would not be allowed to have their demonstration without being harassed. And no matter, even if they showed up with their paintball guns and their vests, armor, and helmets, if Antifa, wasn't attacking them, they weren't going to attack people on the streets. And that's what Antifa was casting it as. Like, they live in this fantasy world. They seem to believe. But Antifa would cast it as they're coming here, and media people would report it as if there was some validity to this, as if the right-wingers were coming in and attacking, right? And if Antifa didn't show up, the right-wingers were going to run buck wild through Portland, attacking people, probably people of color and trans people. Utter bullshit. They would cast it thusly, and then they would show up and start fights and say, see, they're violent, and because we're all idiots, and journalists are largely idiots. Journalists like Sergio Olmos are largely dishonest idiots. That's the impression that Portlanders have. So Tiny and Alan, and I think Alan opted for a jury trial. Tiny, and the jury convicted him because Portland's full of idiots. And then Tiny opted for a judge, a bench trial, and he got a judge that hated him already. And not only did the judge convict, the judge enhanced his sentence and tacked down a couple of years. A lady judge. Anyway, it all sucks. It all sucks. And we're not going to change this by normal political means. Anyway. Okay, and yeah. See, this is not edited, so I'm reading it, and it's all jumbled, like sort of like Joe Biden's brain. In 2022, Vasquez collaborated with Antifa to prosecute 2 right-wing provocateurs known for brawling with Antifa on the streets of Portland. Tiny Toisi is the guy, by the way, one of the people they railroaded. He's the guy who got shot in the foot in September 2021 when Antifa disrupted a right-wing protest against the mask mandates. Remember, and I guess 2021, maybe I got to check that date. It probably was. But we also had another thing that the right wing would do to provoke Antifa. I went to one of these in Salem. They would have protests against mask mandates and COVID lockdowns, and Antifa would show up to disrupt that. Because they're such rebels, I guess, that they show up to disrupt. They show up to disrupt protests against government excess. Anyway, that was our world. Less than 2 years after he was shot in the foot, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison for assault and riot, despite not having physically assaulted anyone. He was convicted on 10 counts, including anyway, I already read that. Toisi's crime, he didn't touch anyone, but what was his crime? His crime was pointing at a van full of Antifa aggressors who arrived on the scene after traveling 15 miles from downtown Portland, specifically to violently disrupt a right-wing demonstration on August 22nd. This needs editing, so please bear with me. Toisi's group had relocated their planned demonstration to an abandoned Kmart parking lot in the city's outskirts, away from its initial downtown location, to avoid the massive Antifa presence promised over the preceding hysterical weeks. The Antifa presence that did indeed gather there. I was there, went there with a friend we wanted to record the fights, but Antifa was there without a dance partner. When I went downtown that day, I found Antifa masked and pensive, darkening the streets in their black bloc attire and marking out their territory with threatening graffiti. Here's some pictures I took of their graffiti. I only took a few pictures of Antifa, and I can't even find any because I was big pussy about it. It was really tense there. Things had reached a fever pitch by August 2021. It was really, there was no more pretense of you could go out there and just film and Antifa would just attack you because they wanted control over any sort of recording. And they had people out there, they had people in the regular so-called respectable media, like Sergio Olmos, who they could count on to edit their video to favor the Antifa side. But anybody that they didn't have control over was likely to get attacked. So anyway, they're out there, they're everywhere in black bloc, waiting for Patriot Prayer to show up. Patriot Prayer is 15 miles out at an abandoned Kmart parking lot, having this ridiculous rally. I went there later. So me and my friend were downtown, we're waiting for the action, it's not going to happen. Here's their graffiti kill list. There's a kill list. Joey G, that I guess Joey Gibson, Andy No, and someone named Audra P. Death to Nazis. This is Portland's downtown waterfront. And instructions on how to take out a knee, with the anarchist symbol. Yeah, I told you already about Patriot Prayer. And you know about Andy Nell. Remember, it was during these confrontations, 2017, 2018, 2019, before BLM took over, that they were already attacking Andy No and other people. on the streets whenever they saw them. Like I said, if you weren't on their side, media on their side, you were definitely the enemy. And unbiased media was one of their biggest enemies and worries. Another man who gained the ire of the district attorney's office for his prominence as a right-wing leader in the serial clashes between patriot groups and Antifa is currently serving a 10-year prison sentence for clashing with Antifa on streets that had been officially abandoned by police. A judge extended his prison term by invoking mandatory minimum laws, the same mandatory minimum laws which district attorney at the time, Mike Schmidt, was campaigning to repeal. So when Mike Schmidt, who wanted to repeal mandatory minimums because they're seen as part of that whole, supposedly racist Clinton crime bill, the early 90s, when they started coming down hard. In the early 90s, it was during the crack wars. And they started coming down hard on, what Hillary Clinton dared to call super predators. And they started introducing things like mandatory minimum sentences, and now those are being repealed, and people are still working to repeal them. Anyway, Mike Schmidt, the district attorney, was actually campaigning as district attorney to repeal these laws. But if you're a right-wing protester, if you're Alan Swinney, he's going to go ahead and avail himself of them. And if you're Portland's current district attorney-elect, he won't take office until the end of the year, and Mike Schmidt isn't going anywhere until he has to. Nathan Vasquez, supposed law and order candidate, he's all about it too. Anyway, this is the story of how anarchists won the cases of the state versus Alan Swinney and Tiny Toisi. As this day scheduled for Toisi's ill-fated protest of August 2021, 2022, excuse me, gets hard to remember, approached Antifa hysterics reached a fever pitch on social media. The dynamic that had persisted since before Donald Trump's election of Toisi's Patriot Prayer Organization and other right-wingers deliberately provoking Antifa with, ironically enough, back the blue demonstrations in support of the police, always producing larger Antifa counter-demonstrators determined to chase them out of town, and countless violent clashes, combined with the exhausted state of the Portland Police Bureau, which at this point had already been reduced by police defunding, thoroughly demoralized, and didn't really was disengaging from regular police duties. All of this combined to create an air of hysteria. So the big rally's coming up. Antifa's promising to blow it up, and Mayor Wheeler mounted a desperate "I Choose Love" campaign, compelling people to not come out and attack the rally, mostly by echoing Antifa rhetoric about the hate and racism of the right. All right. Boy, and
today. At a time like this,
come on in.
With you, we would like to thank Mayor Ted Wheeler and the city of Portland and everyone who contributed to the I Choose Love community challenge today. At a time like this, Portland is in need.
And they basically had to hide for their venue. I don't think they told where they were going to be at. They didn't told it downtown, of course, because Antifa would have showed up to disrupt, of course, this I Choose Love rally.
Deep need of something to bring us together. and I'm happy to be a part of something that can capitalize on doing that. Our mission today in the I Choose Love USA Foundation is collaborating with first responders, city officials, and community members to create a blueprint for building back trust and respect in the city of Portland through transformative healing, choice of love, foundation to a safer, more equitable community that will ultimately.
And so when they try to do this, try and convince Antifa to not go out and attack people on the street for disagreeing with them politically, all they can do in a place like Portland is invoke all the bullshit platitudes, all the left-wing platitudes about equity and whatnot, and so it doesn't work, All they can do is say, yeah, we hate them too, but don't go in and attack them. Yeah, they're the worst people in the world, but don't go in there and attack them. Yes, we must stop them, but not by any means necessary,
Exist, our right to love who we love, our right to live free from discrimination, not to mention the physical attacks, violence, murders, and fire bombings that our community has faced. So when I hear about the Proud Boys coming to town, I think about yet another attack on our community. Because they don't just come to town and rally. They drive around Interstate Avenue in the Lloyd District, looking for trans and gender nonconforming people to attack. They follow and intimidate Black Lives Matters activists on a daily basis. Their hatred isn't just on the occasional weekend. And what we need to do is look at the systems that are creating the Proud Boys and allowing them to flourish. And every time they come to town, what we need to do as a city is say, we are against racism, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, misogyny, and fascism. We stand against those beliefs, and we will protect our citizens from those who have those beliefs. But that's not what we're experiencing. Because what I hear over and over from the community is that they do not feel protected by the police. Far from it. Over and over, the police have shown that they don't protect the community from these far-right extremists. And it's not just a Portland problem. The whole country saw it on January 6th when the far-right took over the US Capitol. We need to change the systems that are allowing this to happen. And as LGBTQ people, we know what it's like to fight for systemic change. We know what it's like to fight for our rights. We know what it's like to have to ask other people to see our humanity enough to recognize our relationships and our genders as real and valid and worthy. And we live in a time where we're reminded daily of the ways that justice is not being served to Black and brown communities. So it's my hope that the lesson learned from our history is that we never doubt our power to make change, that we never doubt that we are stronger together, and that we never doubt that our love is stronger than their hate.
Yeah, so as you can see, it doesn't really work. The whole point of the gathering was trying to get Antifa to chill out and not blow up the city. And of course, it all just devolves into more attacks on the cops, on the city government, on Hawat people, on these supposed Nazis. Now, some of them, early on, a very few Antifa sympathizers worried the Patriots trolling campaign was working. And it was working. If anybody was paying attention, you could see that dynamic again, is that one side was the aggressor, Antifa, and the other side, whatever they were not the aggressor. They were simply showing up and to be attacked, deliberately perhaps, yeah. They were making their point. It didn't matter. Here's an Antifa sympathizer saying, tweeting, Antifa attacked harmless flag waves and protests and turned them into recruiting propaganda for right-wing extremists. Antifa created anti-no out of nothing. Antifa created patriot prayer from nothing, and nothing has caused the Proud Boys' growth more than Antifa's violence. If Antifa would have just let the small groups have their little flag waves and their harmless little protests where they stood around doing and accomplishing nothing, that's important too, they really were accomplishing nothing, there wouldn't be a far-right problem in Portland. You did this. Antifa is Bush starting the war in Afghanistan. August 26, 2021. Well, this guy had it wrong because, being an Antifa sympathizer, he doesn't realize you are the man, capital M, Antifa. You're not the you're not fighting the man. You are the man. The man, to the extent they're not manipulating you and putting provocateurs in your ranks, the man is happy to let you do your thing because you're serving his ends. And because the people you're fighting are pardon. I didn't even go looking for the mute button. Mute is such a problem with this. Because the people you're fighting are political neophytes who don't even know. I mean, they don't have the sophistication to be white supremacists. They don't even have the sophistication to be Nazis. They don't have, an analysis, a political analysis like you guys do in your crude way. But in a sense, they are the opposite of you. They're a reaction to political analysis. They're a reaction to political organization. They're simple people who would be patriots wherever you put them. I mean, if they were Bolivians, they would be the regular Bolivians whose default position is to be pro-Bolivia. I mean, that's it. And there's a few among you, Antifa, who are smart enough to understand this and don't care. Because in our perverse environment, as we see, your actions, which are on their face ridiculous, absurd, and wrong, still work in your favor. At the end of the day, nothing works in your favor if you're Antifa, if you really believe Antifa is social anarchist. They imagine they're in that same line with the anarchists of the early 20th century. They're not, no more than progressives are in the same line with traditional progressives. But, if you were really that, you would not, the state would be coming down hard on you. None of this shit would be even allowed to happen because they would be rounding you guys up. But right now you are quite useful idiots. So the Patriot Pair, this is August 22nd, 2021. They go to an abandoned Kmart parking lot 15 miles out of town, and they had a demonstration. I went there. So I'm downtown. Antifa's waiting. It's tense, but no sign of the right-wingers. So me and my pal, we drove to Park Rose neighborhood, very edge of Portland proper, an abandoned Kmart parking lot. And there they are, Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer guys and associated folk are out there, and they gave a little demonstration, and I hung around there for a while, and they gave a demonstration. It was kind of ridiculous. I think I have some footage of it. Their Summer of Love rally, again, this rally commemorating the rally of the previous August 22nd, which was a huge brawl. And they're out there, and they're, and here's Tony, and here's what gets it tiny.
The people on the right are coming out and taking a stand, saying, well, why do you guys gear up? Why do you guys show up looking for a fight? Helmets. The last time we show up without helmets, people went home with heads cracked, rocks thrown at them. So what the hell do you expect? It's already sad that I have to put on gear to come out in America, the land of the free, to stand up for my beliefs. And that's because people that disagree will just attack you. I've said this multiple times, but it seems like these people can't get it in their head. If people learn how to disagree without disrespect, we can fix this damn place. But what we're looking to accomplish is to send a message to the elected officials in Portland that we're not going to stand down. You can come after us. You can weaponize the justice system to arrest our people.
Oh, they will.
One gets arrested, and guess what?
This is ironic. So later this day, things are going to happen that are going to land him in jail for 8 years. And this little bravado earlier come back to haunt him. By the way, at this same protest, so we hung around here for a good while, and we watched it. There was some ridiculous, really poor production. I mean, it's the right-wingers. But, they had a stage, and they had beer, and they had sound system, a little bit of production. And they had, not all the speeches were completely ridiculous. A couple of people came up and talked about the January 6th prosecutions, which were happening. But nothing shows you just how biased the system is against you than what happened to these poor bastards this day. And they're out here doing this. Eventually, Antifa is going to show up here. And like I said, the little fuckers, you give them credit for, some courage. A van full of these little pinners, as we used to call them, scrawny little kids, went out there. They got tired of waiting downtown. And they went out to this protest to confront them. And got roughed up and got their van overturned and ran off. And Tiny ends up doing 8 years because, like I said, he didn't touch anybody. He just pointed at the van and said, "There's Antifa. Go get them." And that's all it took.
10 more is going to come out. Because we're never going to give up. We love this country. We're passionate about defending it. And we're not going to back down from it. You can bring whatever number of anarchists and freaking fascists that you want to bring out to stand against us. But we're still going to come out. Even if there's 2 of us, even if there's 3, me and my brothers are going to stand. This is not the Middle East. This is America.
If only it was the Middle East.
That says, let Portland burn. Yes, the elected officials are shitty. Some of the people are shitty. It looked like a shithole. But guess what? Too many people sacrificed their lives to defend this land for us to give it up to these communists. So we're not going to play that game today. We relocated the rally to avoid the altercation and the violence between us and the people on the left. But if they do show up here, we're going to defend ourselves. That's what we're going to do.
Okay, so is there a plan to go to downtown Portland?
There is no plan to go downtown Portland. The reason why we relocated here is to prevent the altercation and violence breaking out.
How they convicted this guy after this. And this is the guy who a Portland jury convicted after all this. I mean, fuck Portland and fuck those stupid people who imagine themselves as liberals. Wall it off, Malal. Wall it off and let them starve. It's like it's the plague. There's a plague in Portland, and the rest of us should be protected from that contagion. Here's the edges of that Parkland rally.
Olive, bro. It was so fucking good. Amazon Prime, bro. Showed up next day.
And so Antifa's hanging out on the edges, and there's this ridiculous, monkey dance going on.
Even though it's killed about 1 million people, bro. That's so fucking cool, bro.
So that's ridiculous. And here's on the edges of that protest. This is not my footage. This is Racket News. And here, Antifa, hanging around the edges of that protest in Black Bloc, they attacked a woman journalist. A woman journalist who's a left-winger, who's sympathetic to their side. But like I said, if you're not just, if you're even suspected of being unbiased in your coverage of doing journalism, they will attack. I did not witness this one personally.
All your cameras and your phone. Fuck you. Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out, Kata. You fucking endangered people by flying to fucking Colombia and endangering everyone by opening.
And so their putative reason for attacking this woman, I think she's Colombian. Their putative reason for attacking her was that she flew to Colombia and flew back and might have infected people with COVID. Remember, COVID hysterics were still in effect.
I'm up to COVID, you little slut. Good job to everybody who flew to Florida, bud.
Get the fuck off! You're doing nothing!
I didn't know this. Kind of a flop. Kind of a basketball flop, but they are attacking a girl.
We don't want to harm her. We're not. Let's just let her get it.
And they've thrown something at her, some substance that looks like pink paint. It's okay.
I gotta wait.
They threw paint in her eyes, or maced her or something.
Can you rinse her mouth out?
Is there a medic in the crowd?
Is there a medic in the crowd?
Is there a medic?
And this is when Antifa was showing up just LARPing extreme. Yeah, they had their own medics, right? Because part of their thing was, we're anarchists. We do it for ourselves. We're anarchists in the traditional vein of anarchists. What's the phrase? I forget the phrase. That goes all the way back to the original anarchists. But just the idea is that we will do for ourselves things that the state is presently doing. It's all rather silly because they had their own medics, because we're not going to call the fire department. We're not going to call the paramedics. We're going to do it. And, it's you see right away, okay, you're doing it. And if this actually grew into something, eventually you would have to establish rules and laws around it and regulations, to keep idiots from doing it and to keep people, keep malpractice from killing people. You can instantly see it, and you see it even in their early LARPy stages of this. What's the phrase I'm looking for? You can see it even in their early LARPing mimicry of this stuff, that the problems immediately come up. The problems of standardization, the problem of keeping idiots and incompetents and crazies out of the business of enforcing the law, or enforcing rules, or whatever, keeping the peace, let's say, out of the business of responding to emergencies. There's a guy who calls himself Raindrops Works on YouTube, he's some sort of nut. I think he's a guy one of these like shut-in guys. He's male. He identifies as female, but he doesn't really present. He lives with his cat, and he's got anxiety kind of guy. But he does good work, really. He's biased, but he does good work in covering the courts in Portland, as far as it goes.
Own cognizance, or be relying on the state and slight case 301 or App 237, the 2019 case. The defense would be the argument that
Nobody's going to come watch. All right, fuck you guys. You suck.
Whether someone is releasable under the Oregon statute
Anyway,
240.
We've already done an hour. Anyway, I'm going to shape this up, and eventually it'll be on the Substack. No one will read it, but it's better work than 90% of what's out there. It's better work than what you bastards who won't show up to watch deserve. It's better work than you can handle, because you want to be spoon-fed bullshit. That's fine. I'm going to keep working, though. I'm going to do it until an audience for it develops. Hey, Tom, good to see you. I don't think we've seen Tom for a while. And you guys can just fucking sit around and jack off to whatever stupid, pointless, meaningless, childlike shit that you do. Anyway, yeah, I've shown this 2 or 3 times over the years. There's Tiny on the day that he supposedly attacked Antifa. He's covered in, Swinney was in the same condition too when he supposedly was guilty of assault. They're covered in paint from all the paintballs and crap, and Antifa liked to like put, gross toxic substances like pee or poop in jars and throw it. And they're covered in the stuff that they've been pelted with. But still, they're seen as the aggressors, and they're in jail right now for attacking these good people who just showed up. Oh, I've got lots of good footage in here, yeah. Yeah, August 22nd, 2021 was a wild day. But anyway, I've got to find time, shape this up, and post that some other time. Yeah, Tom. Well, we're going to do, Tom, because YouTube refuses to, actually send out notifications, apparently. They won't help, but they let me stay on, so that's cool. We're going to do Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays. It's weekdays with Wednesday off. And we're going to do an hour in the morning at 10 a.m. Might push it up to 11, probably 10 a.m. Just a tight little hour every weekday except for Wednesday, except for hump day when we recuperate. Mental illness is at the root of all of this, right? I mean, there's mental health issues with the right-wingers. I defend them, but they have all sorts of problems. But what I don't see on the right-wing side is guilt. What I don't see is moral complicity in all this. I just see on their side, frankly, often stupidity and other things. But what I don't see over there is criminal complicity. And that exists on the Antifa side, obviously. And we're just looking for an outro song. We're just going to get out of here. 10 o'clock, weekdays, here. Join me. And screw those people who won't show up, They're idiots. They're not the cool kids. We're the cool ones here. Just remember that. All right? And go with God. Because who better to go with, right?